Hey Brandon, so there's people that read Matthew 24 and they don't get it. They think it already happened, and some don't think that it's for a later time. Can you describe Matthew 24 for us?
So Jesus himself gives us a very good linear time frame and a lot of good points to look at of what we can expect for the last days, right? The time right before the age ends. It begins in Matthew 24:2, verses 1 and 2. He says, "And Jesus was leaving the temple grounds. His disciples pointed out to him the various temple buildings. And Jesus responded, 'Do you see all these buildings? I tell you the truth, they will be completely demolished. Not one stone will be left on top of another.'" And this is kind of outside the scope of eschatology, but this is just a proven fact that this was fulfilled, and the Western Wall is not in fact part of the temple that was alive in Jesus' time, as the Hebrews worship it today. They're basically worshiping the wall itself. It's part of something completely different. Jesus told us that no stone would be left unturned, and it wasn't. I just wanted to include that because it's in Matthew 24. But it talks about him later sitting on the Mountain of Olives. He's with his disciples, and they came to him privately, and they were asking him, tell us, when will all this happen? What sign will signal your return and the end of the world? So the disciples say, what can we look for? What is it that we're going to be trying to see that's going to signal that you are going to return? And Jesus goes into this Olivet Discourse that a lot of people misinterpret or try to read ideas into. But, we see a lack of evidence for some theologies, and we see that there's not complete fulfillment for others, so we know this isn't a future event. But Jesus first responds, he says, "Don't let anyone mislead you, for there will be many that come in my name claiming I am the Messiah. They're going to deceive many, and you will hear of wars and threats of wars, but don't panic. Yes, these things must take place, but the end won't follow immediately." So this is the first thing to notice. There will be bad things that happen. There will be false Christs. There will be false messiahs that will rise up. But this isn't the end. It's not immediately you're going to be raptured or immediately I'm going to return. He says that there are other things that must take place. And he says specifically, but the end won't follow immediately. Nation will go to war against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in many parts of the world. But all this is only the first of the birth pains, with more to come. So again, he's saying this is just the tip of the iceberg. Don't expect my return. And this is where the pre-tribbers will hop in and say, well, we're going to be taken out, so it's not really going to matter. And then he'll return after all the bad stuff happens. But that's not evident anywhere in Jesus' words whatsoever in this section of Scripture. And he says that the wars will happen, kingdoms will fight against each other, there will be the famines and the earthquakes. That's what we're starting to see now. And people are thinking his return is imminent, when in reality, this is just the beginning. And once the 7 years start, we still have 7 years to go. The 7 years haven't even started yet. Right? He then goes on to say, then you will be arrested, persecuted, and killed. You will be hated all over the world because you are my followers. Right? So because of us following his name openly, we will be persecuted. Right? We will be killed. There will be Christians who will be killed. Their lives will be taken. They will die as martyrs. And it will be specifically because they are his followers during these last days. And many will turn away from me and betray and hate each other. And many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Right? Sin will be rampant everywhere. We're starting, obviously that's happening now. America is imploding into wickedness. And the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. So we see this call that we are responsible to try and maintain and endure to the end if we're alive. Right? If we're not taken out, if we're not a martyr, we need to endure to the end. Right? And the good news about the kingdom will be preached throughout the whole world so that all nations will hear it and the end will come. Then he goes on to say, the day is coming when you see that Daniel the prophet spoke about, the sacrilegious object that causes desecration standing in the holy place. Reader, pay attention. Okay? If you don't know what is being talked about, this is what Daniel prophesies about the abomination of the Antichrist. This is a person, a man, not a religious system. This is a man who's going to go in and cause a desecration, do an abomination within the place that is considered holy. So now we know that the temple needs to have been rebuilt for this event to have taken place. Okay? Now we pay attention. Everything that's listed after this is what we can consider the Great Tribulation, right? Then those in Judea must flee to the hills when they see this abomination take place in the place that they're living. This isn't just to say that this is addressed only to the Hebrews. This is a warning call to those in the end time to say, when you see the Antichrist cause an abomination, you better flee because he's going to start killing you specifically, the Hebrews and the Christians. Right? A person out on the deck of the roost must not go down to the house to pack. A person out in the field must not return to even get a coat. How terrible it will be for pregnant women and for nursing mothers in those days, and pray that your flight will not be in the winter or in the Sabbath. right? A lot of people try to take this as, well, we better be following after the Sabbath because when he returns, there will be people practicing the Sabbath. But we know according to Scripture, the Antichrist wants to eliminate the Hebrews and he wants to eliminate the Christians. So there will be Hebrews that are practicing the Mosaic covenant that hopefully this won't be taking place during that Sunday, on a Sabbath, Saturday on a Sabbath, because they're charged they can only go less than a mile in that day. So it would be really hard to flee from the Antichrist trying to kill him if it happened and they were trying to follow after those laws. Moving forward, it says in verse 23, then if anyone tells you, look, here is the Messiah, there he is, don't believe it. For false messiahs and false prophets will rise up and perform great signs and wonders, so as deceive, if possible, even God's chosen ones. See, I have warned you about this ahead of time. He would not warn us if we would not be alive and here to experience this. Okay? Christians are doing themselves a disservice by pretending they're going to be gone when all of these happen. When Christ said, I'm preparing you beforehand so you don't have to worry about it. You trust in me. Unless you see me return in the sky, essentially, you know it's not me. It continues. So if someone tells you, look, the Messiah is out in the desert, don't bother to go look. Or look, he is hiding here, don't believe it. For as the lightning flashes in the east and shines to the west, so it will be when the Son of Man comes. Just as the gathering of the vultures show there's carcass nearby, so these signs indicate that the end is near. Christ's return will be seen worldwide. He will come in the air. We will go up to meet him. When a false Messiah comes, does miracles and wonders, and we look at that and think, is that him? The qualifying factor is, did he come back through the sky? Are we going to meet him? That's why he's warning us, right? He's not in the desert. He's not hiding somewhere. But it says in verse 29, immediately after the anguish of these days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will give no light, the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. This event must take place, and then, at last, the sign that the Son of Man is coming will appear in the heavens. There will be deep mourning among all the prophets of the earth, or the peoples of the earth, and they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with power and great glory. And he will send out his angels with mighty blast of a trumpet, and he will gather his chosen ones from all over the world, from the farthest ends of the earth and heaven. So we see all of those things must take place. We must hold on and endure to the end, right? Don't be surprised because Jesus warned us. There will be false messiahs performing miracles. He will come in the sky, and that's when we know he'll be here. And then it goes on further in verse 32, when the Son of Man returns, it will be like in Noah's day. In those days before the flood, the people were enjoying banquets and parties and weddings right up to the time Noah entered his boat. People didn't realize what was going to happen until the flood came and swept them all away. That is the way it will be when the Son of Man comes. When Christ returns, there will be people in the world living everyday life, right? That's why I don't believe that the tribulation will be worldwide, that every single person will be affected and the Antichrist will not have full authority and control over the globe, because there will be people living in peace, there will be people getting married, there will be people acting like nothing's going to happen, and Christ will return and it will be a surprise to them. So it will be a global effect, but it won't affect literally every individual. 2 men will be working together in the field, one will be taken the other left. 2 women will be grinding flour at the mill, one will be taken the other left. This is at the event specific to when Christ returns. Too many tribbers say that this is an event that happens at a separate event, right? This is all tied to the same section here. Jesus is talking about his return, and immediately after that, the signs, one of them is the 2 men will be working, one will leave, because that is his return, gathering his elect. Right, we look in verse 45, a faithful, sensible servant is one who the master can give the responsibility of managing his other household servants and feeding them. This is a call to Christians today. If the master returns and finds the servant has done a good job, there will be a reward. I tell you the truth, the master will put that servant in charge of all he owns. But what if the servant is evil and thinks my master won't be back for a while? And he begins beating the other servants, partying and getting drunk? The master will return, announced and unexpected, and he will cut the servant to pieces and assign him a place with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. If we waste our time, if God has given us much, and we do nothing with it, and in fact we use it to abuse God's other servants, God's going to send us to hell. That's what he's saying, right? So we need to be wise with our time. We need to be wise to the things that are going on in the world, and we need to refocus and make sure that we are not wasting time and interpreting Scripture with Scripture alone, right? Nowhere in there did Jesus say, oh, by the way, my chosen will be taken out, and only those who are saved afterwards are going to be the ones that need to hear this message, okay? And that's just dishonest reading of Scripture. That's not being literarily consistent. So, examine Scripture, look at Jesus' words, go through Matthew 24, list the different things that are going to happen, and then go look at Mark 13 and Luke 21 and compare, because those are examples of the same thing and they give us details to paint a full picture. So, obviously do it in prayer and use it doing Scripture.